All right, so the first thing I'm going to cover will be importing your student rosters. The reason we want to import a student roster is for when we run the answer sheets through the scanner, it's going to take that student ID number from the piece of paper, and it's going to match it to a student that's inside the student database. And to do that, the first thing we want to do is go up to the top left-hand corner and select File. Scroll down to Student Database.
Hopefully it's going to be larger than this.
And this is a student database. There are two ways to add your students. The first way is very simple. Just select Add Student. Put in any student ID number that they will be using when they take the test. You can type their first name in, last name, and that student has been added. Now, if you have a large class size, or what I always recommend, it's easier just to put the entire school in there, then everybody just shares this database. And to do that, we can import a student list. So we would go up to Import Students, and we want to select Choose File under Step 1. And so now we want to go and load our student files.
Can I ask you a question while you're doing that?
Sure.
You said import your whole school. Can you import different lists, or is it better to just create one big database?
I always say it's better to create one big database because it's only going to pull the students out that are being run through the scanner.
Okay. So we should actually load everyone on. Good. Thank you. And if you have loaded up a class and you want to add more?
Yeah, you can always just add another list.
Okay.
It's not going to change anything. Right down here, once you pick the file to import, this is now going to fill itself out. It's going to give you a preview of exactly what information you're loading up. DataLink Connect needs 3 pieces of information. It needs a student's first name, last name, and student ID number. If you have other information in there, DataLink Connect will go in there and pull out the information it needs. You don't have to align it a certain way. Step 2 is just a verification process, just to make sure that it pulled the right information that we wanted. So right here, this is actual information coming from that spreadsheet. So I can see first name Kimberly, Kenny, Jeremy, those are first names. Last name Jones, Johnson, Carr. I guess those could be either or, but those are probably going to be the last names. And then down here, those are definitely student ID numbers. So now I know that it's pulled the right information out. DataLink Connect also will know if your first row is a column header or not. So it's automatically going to check or uncheck this box. And once we got everything set up, we just hit import. And just like that, I've imported 232 students into my student database.
Perfect.
Now, we've tested DataLink Connect with over 500,000 students in it at one time. So that's why I always tell everybody, just put your whole school in there. And then it'll be a lot easier because once you've created one student database, I can now select Export Students. And now I'm going to create an Apperson student database file. So now you can stick this on your network file, email it around to everybody, and so that way it makes it very easy for them to go ahead and create their own student database. Also, if you did need to delete some students out of the student database, you can do that also. You can delete them one at a time just by clicking on their row, and it will highlight, and then select Delete Student. And if you wanted to delete the whole list and start fresh, you would just select Clear Students. This will have one more extra step. You'll have to check the box before you can press OK. That's just because we don't want somebody to accidentally wipe out their student database right before a test. That's the whole process behind importing and creating your student database. Any questions on that? Anything you'd like me to cover?
No,
Very easy.
seems great.
Okay, perfect. So now that we have our students in here, the next thing we need to do is to start creating our keys. You have 2 ways you can create a key. You can create a key using the piece of paper, one of our answer sheets, just like you've probably done for many years using Scantron. Or you can actually come in here and create a digital key. And so I'm going to show you both ways. First way I'll show you is creating the digital key. And to do that, the first thing we want to do is go up to the top left-hand corner and select File, Create Key. this screen's going to appear. Now the first thing we want to do is we want to come in here and look for the form number. That's going to be located on our answer sheets, usually in the upper right-hand corner. We have almost all of our answer sheets listed inside of here, so you should be able to find yours. If you don't find your form number in here, you will just have to use a paper key. But as I'll show you later, it doesn't really matter which way you do this. It's always your preference, because they're both going to get you to the exact same spot. So right here we have our key properties. This is going to let you know, just kind of a safeguard to make sure you've chosen the right form. So I can go and look at my form and say, yes, there's 100 questions on it, and the response format is A, B, C, D, E, just to make sure that I've selected the right form.
Right.
I can now add my name. I can put an exam name, and this is all good for when you save, as it's automatically going to take this information here and put it as the saved file.
Mm-hmm.
Right down here, I can put a date to the test.
Mm-hmm.
And on this form right here, the reason it says essay points is the form I have has an area for open response questions. So that way, if I needed to ask a subjective question or an open response, I can then fill it out and then put the total value they earned here. Not all our forms have that.
Okay. No, ours doesn't.
There's probably only a couple that actually do. Here is the verify button. There's also going to be a verify box at the top of that answer sheet. And what this means is, if I were to run the answer sheets through right now, whenever a student missed a question, it would put a red dash in the margin next to that question, so that way they know they got the answer wrong. Good. However, if I were to check this box or bubble in that bubble at the top of the answer sheet, instead of putting that red dash, it's going to print the correct answer and put it in that margin, so that way the student will know instantly what they got wrong and what the correct answer should have been. So that's a choice you have.
And when on this form, does the score get printed somewhere on this form?
Yes.
Yes, it's
going to,
yeah.
Yeah, there should be a little box. I'm not familiar exactly what that form looks like, but most likely there's going to be a box somewhere towards the bottom.
Yeah.
Is that score presented as a number correct or as a percentage correct?
It's going to be shown, it should have a number and a percentage.
Okay.
He said you either get a dash or you get the correct answer.
Okay, so in this box it says verify.
Uh-huh.
If you don't mark that box, Justin, tell me if I'm wrong here, but if you don't mark that box, then it just indicates which ones they got wrong with a dash.
Okay.
If you mark verify, then it'll give the number,
Okay.
the letter in this margin here. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Just so it marks it, so they can count and say, yeah, I missed 12 and my score is correct. You know. Machine we have, you can forget to have it marked all together, and students get their answer sheet back. How this grade, you know, they get really mad if it's not marked. Yeah. So you want something that's going to mark every wrong answer wrong. Otherwise, students.
Yeah, and that's going to do that for you.
Yeah, that's very good.
And so the next thing we can do when we create our digital key is to come in here and put our correct answers in. Well, the great thing about putting in the answers in here is I'm only able to type what's in this response format. So I know you can't see my keyboard, but I'm pushing all sorts of letters and numbers. It's only going to let me write A, B, C, D, and E in here. However, I can write multiple correct answers. And the way that would work is a student would have to answer both A and D to get that answer correct.
And on a 3-score, what about if you actually screwed up and you have 2 answers that are correct? Could it be the either or? Is there an option for that?
There is an option for that, and I'll show you that later on once we get the key created. I'll kind of go over some of our custom scoring with you.
All right.
So once I get this filled out, the next thing I'll do is I will send it to the grid, and it's going to push the key up to the top part. It'll have my score and all my correct answers. If I need to make any changes, I can come in here and instantly change the key.
Oh, that's nice. Change it right there in the screen.
Yep.
Good.
I can also, even after I run the test, which I'll show you later, I'll be able to still modify it if I need to. So that's creating a digital key. So I'm going to go ahead and run a paper key through. And as you can see, we are now at the exact same spot. So whatever preference you want to use, that's up to you. The big difference is this is not going to have my name, the test date on it, the test name, because I'm using a piece of paper that doesn't have that information.
Run a paper key through. Is there a special form? Oh, and you can mark this form key. You just fill in the little dot there for key.
Exactly.
And then all the information here and just run it through, and the machine knows that's the key, huh?
Yeah, and trigger, that's the key. Then every form that's run after that will run through that key.
Okay, cool.
Now, once you have your key in DataLink Connect, whether you've made a digital one or a paper one, the next thing you always have to do is save your key. And the reason is you could probably use this key multiple times or maybe just make very small modifications to it. To do that, we can go to File, Save Key, and now it's going to save the key, the test key, my name, and the date. And now I'll always have access to this key. So the next thing I want to show you is that custom scoring we were talking about. So if we go to Session, this is where we can access scoring. And this is where it's going to allow you to do a little customization in your scoring. The first box is standard scoring, and what this means is you'll be able to have a standard amount of points for all the questions on the entire test. By default, every question is worth 1 point, but if I want to start using standard scoring, I could check this box, and now I could put 4 points, and as you can see, the test is now worth 100 points. The next scoring is custom scoring, and this is actually going to allow you to give individual questions different point values. So if you did have a very difficult question, I can now come in here and make that 10 points. Now what you were talking about, either or questions, what you'll see right here is I have my dual answers right here, and this is no longer grayed out. So if I were to do this one also, so we'll do DC, you can see it ungrade this one. And it gives me 3 choices. Default is all. That means the student's going to have to answer both A and B to get that answer correct.
Yeah.
The next option is either or. And the student can answer either A or B. And then both means the student can answer A and B or A or B to get the answer correct.
Yeah. Okay, that's good.
And also, if you want to come in here and if you want to kind of be like the SATs, you can even deduct points for students for guessing. And if they get the question incorrect, they'll actually lose a point instead of just not gaining any points. And you can do that in both standard scoring and custom scoring by filling in these boxes right here. Will you guys be using rubrics at all?
Let's see.
For multiple response items, usually not. For essay, yeah, always. But how would you use for response?
If you wanted to combine your essays that go along with your true, false, multiple choice test, you can actually do that on the same answer sheet. And the way you would actually do that is you would actually have them answer their 25 questions, and then you would come in and fill in the rest of it for them. And to do that, we would come into our rubric scoring here. And this is probably one of the more advanced aspects of DataLink Connect, but I can come in here and actually make this my own rubric field and still use a basic form like the one you're using. So what I can come and do is I will check Use, and that's going to tell DataLink Connect that I'm using rubric scoring for these 5 questions. I'll then come in and create my field. Okay, so now that I've created my field, I can now come over here where it says question. And now I can switch them to rubric. And as you'll see, instead of having a correct answer, it's now going to have a point value. And the point value is going to be whatever the highest number is. And so now that I have these filled out as a rubric, I have my second choice. So right now, the way this sits is whatever letter that has the highest point value that's bubbled in is the one it's going to score. The way I like to describe this is if the student was giving a presentation and every time they covered a key talking point, you would then bubble in one of these and they would start earning points. If he hit 4 talking points, I would bubble E, D, C, and B, and then he would get 4 points for that question because it is the highest possible point total that I bubbled. Now, on the flip side of that, I can go lowest. And that's the exact opposite, which how I like to say it is the same presentation is going on. If the student gets marked down for breaking eye contact with his audience and looks down at his paper, we are then going to deduct points. I would then start at 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then, or A, B, C, D, whichever one has the lowest point value, that's how it's going to score it. The next one is add together, and that is literally going to add all these together for a possible 15 points now. So if I want to give 9 points, I would bubble in A and B. If I want to give 6 points, I would bubble in B and D.
Okay.
We also sell rubric forms that might make it a little bit easier than actually doing the rubric scoring in this. So that's something you might want to talk with Penny about.
Okay. All right. Thank you. We understand.
No problem. So that is our scoring features. And as we can see right up here, this is another way we can see that this is actually rubric scoring because it's going to be listed right up here.
Okay.
Now the next thing I want to show you is aligning your key objectives to your test questions. And to do that, and before I do that, I want to save my key again because I did make some changes to it. I'm actually going to close DataLink Connect, and I'm going to open up the Learning Outcomes Editor.
Do we have that?
That you can also download it on our website for no additional charge also. And this is going to allow you to actually create, as what we call them, I work mostly in K through 12 standards. I know in higher education, I think they're more learning objectives. And so we can actually go and create our own. To do that, all I need to do is select Add Standard Set. I can name my standard. The next thing I want to do is select my Add Top Level Standard. And this is going to be like your group. So we'll have our top level, and then we'll actually have the individual standards underneath of it. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select Save and add a child because I want to drop down a level. So if you think of this on a generational plane, if I want to drop down a generational plane, I'll have a child. If I want to stay on the same one, I have my brothers and my sisters.
Okay.
So to drop down one, we can see I got my group up here, and now it's 1.1. So now I can add my standards in.
Okay.
And I'm going to do Save and Add Sibling because I want to stay on this level. And now you can see I have the group of standards, I have my individual standards. If I needed to, I can go down another level.
Sure.
And put in substandards if I wanted to.
Okay.
So once we get our standards in here,
And you're a child of a child.
Yeah, a substandard, so I can come in here and add a child, and now I'm 1.31.
Okay, great.
And so now I have my substandard.
Thanks.
Anytime you see a little plus sign like this, it means you can drop down another level.
Okay. Where on your website do you find this learning standards, learning outcomes and standards editor?
Yeah, if you go to apperson.com, it should be where you download DataLink Connect. If I wanted to share these standards, if I was really, really nice and I took the time to make all these standards and I wanted to share them with other teachers, you can do that. All you need to do is select Export Standard Set. It's going to create this special file, and then what you can do is save it, and then you can actually send these to everybody else at your school so they can also use the standards. So that way, not everybody has to go and recreate their own standard sets.
Okay.
And they would just go ahead and import them just like I'm doing now. And as you can see, I've now imported these other standards I've created a little while ago.
Fantastic.
And so that's the LOE. It's very short, easy, simple to use. You just can't have DataLink Connect and the LOE open at the same time. And the reason that is they share the same standard files. What's great about that is you didn't see me save the LOE files because they're already going to be inside DataLink Connect once I reopen it.
Okay.
So I'm going to load that key that I've been creating. It's going to have all my data back here. And now I want to actually align some of my test questions to some of these standards. To do that, I will go to Session. I will go to Standards. And here are my standards that I just created. To align them to your test questions, just drag and drop. You'll have the group end up over here. All your standards will be right here. And then to align them to a test question is very easy. You select the standard, you select Assign, and then just check the box next to the question that you want aligned to this standard.
Okay.
Select OK. Those questions will appear up here. Now, one thing I do want to point out is currently with this box checked, I can only have one test question aligned to one standard. If I wanted a test question aligned to more than one standard, I would just need to uncheck the box right here.
Oh,
yeah, because you could have questions to apply to more than one.
Yeah.
So if I uncheck the box, it allows me to align all my questions again.
Yeah.
And then they come up. Okay.
The next thing I want to show you is we can actually edit the standards. And the big part about editing the standards is not editing the title or description, it's adding prescriptive information. What this is going to allow you to do is anything I type in this box right here, if a student misses a question aligned to that standard, it's going to write this at the bottom of the student proficiency report. So it might be read chapter 3 because that's where the questions came from.
Okay.
And you can literally type anything you want that you think that may help the students.
You help the students because this is coming out on the final report after the test, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. And then we have our proficiency level over here on the left. It's going to default to 80%, but I can move this to whatever proficiency level I want, but it will always default at 80.
Okay.
So once you're done, you just need to press OK, and then of course save the key again because we don't want to lose all the work that we just did. So we'll go and we'll save the key.
That'd be easy to forget.
And now the key is saved. Since we have this done, now we have our standards aligned, we have our key created. I'm going to start running my answer sheets through.
find out what portion of what you taught was most difficult, or where they're going to need more help.
Once you do the database, the students' names will appear here. Here we have our student ID numbers. We have their percentages, their score, and then the actual letter grade. We can see everybody did pretty bad on this test for me. If I do see anything that's out of the ordinary, so like everybody missing every question, it's probably maybe I need to go and change it, and I can do that by just coming in here and switching it, and as you can see, it's going to adjust everybody's scores.
Could I ask you something, please?
Yes.
The grade.
Uh-huh.
What's in terms of, we're from South Africa, in terms of these grades, is a D 50 to 60, or what is a D?
That's up to you.
Can we change it? That's what I wanted to ask.
Yes, if you go down to grade scales under file, this is going to come up right here, and this is the grade scale that I have currently listed.
Perfect. Thank you.
And you can actually have different ones. So I've saved a special one for myself, and then we have our standard scale also.
Yeah, minus plus. Okay, good.
That's great. Thank you.
No problem. And so now the next thing we want to do is, of course, look at the reports. So now that we have all our information in here, and the reports are going to look really bad because everybody got such low scores.
Can you enlarge that a little bit?
I can enlarge it. This is as big as it gets. I have a really big screen, so it's kind of making it probably look a little bit small.
We can't
but what I can do is I can move it to a PDF file. Here, this should be a little bit better.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Oh, yeah, that's wonderful.
So this is actually the PDF report. All your reports you can save to a PDF, so that way you can have it. This is our item analysis report. I know this was very important to you. And this is automatically going to, everything will fill itself out. It's going to look a little weird because we have our rubric questions down here.
Yeah, understand.
So, but if we just look up top here, it's a great tool because now I can instantly go down the side and I can see, wow, 66% of my students missed that question. What did they answer? And kind of looks like everything's spread out. But if I go and look at question number 18, I can see that 55% of my students chose C. So now I can go see, okay, what's that distractor? Why are they choosing C and not B, which is the correct answer? Also, I can get my point by serial. That's also going to be a good indicator if it's a good question or not. You want to get as close to 1 as possible. That means the question's strong. And basically what that relates back to is how are the students who are getting a lower score on the test doing on this question compared to how the higher students are doing.
So, so I see you said the point by serial. That's for the correct answer.
Yes.
Do you use discrimination index for each of the distractors as well?
We can do that. That will be in one of our Excel reports. And let me go ahead and download that report and I will show you. That is going to be in our detailed item analysis report.
Oh. It's very handy when you have a question that doesn't discriminate very well, and it's good to see if there's any positive discriminators on the distractors, you know.
Yeah, and a lot of our nursing and EMT schools, this is the report that they like the most because it does give you that point by serial for each of the individual responses.
Okay.
And also its question as a whole.
It's about the dark lines.
Got it. That's really useful. Okay. And so B is the correct answer for that first question.
Yes.
And if it really discriminates, you throw that question out. Yeah, it has to be positive, right? You'll never see 0.8, 0.9, by the way.
This is just the way that I set it up because of how we did the questions. Now, a couple other good reports that I want to show you. One is the scorecard. Another thing is a lot of our reports have different little settings that you can kind of manipulate to customize your reports a little bit. And that's down in this bottom left-hand corner under settings.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is the scorecard report. And this is something that if you do change a lot of your answers, maybe you don't want to go through every single answer sheet and redo their score. So instead, you can go ahead and print this out to them. It's 4 to a page, 4 students to a page. Their names will be listed right up here. And if I want to, let's say I don't want them to know what their incorrect answers were. So I can go and delete that, and now they can only see the right answers and that they missed certain questions, just like we did with the answer sheet. So this is something that's really good if, for whatever reason, you wanted to pass something back, but you didn't want to pass back the actual answer sheet. Something on the item analysis I want to show you, we do have the settings. You can change the graph color. The number one thing I always hear about is why is your percent incorrect green? It should be red, and then your correct answers over here should be green. So it's very easy. Once you get your version, you can come in here and switch it so it's a little bit more realistic.
I like that better, yeah. Seems more right.
Here's our student proficiency reports. This has our standards, so this is going to let us know exactly how they're doing in their standards. Here we can see that this student's doing very well in standard number 3, but the other 2 standards are really weighing him down, so his overall proficiency level will be below our required 75%. Again, but what we can see is here are the prescriptive information that I've put in here. So now the student does know where he needs to go and look for these questions.
Very good.
We can look at the class level as a whole. And then if you really like data, this is our class proficiency item analysis. So you're going to be able to see the item analysis of each question along with the proficiency of the standard.
That's good.
Yeah, that's good.
Something else I want to show you in our reporting, if you go back up to File, we have our batch reports. So if you do have a large classroom, you probably don't want to download 35, 40 individual student proficiency reports. So a batch report is going to allow you to come in here and actually choose which reports you want to use. So if I want to do student proficiency, I want to save it as a PDF. I'm going to name it K-12. So that way, if I want to go and print out all of their student proficiency reports at one time, I just hit the K-12 up here. I will save it on my desktop. And now when I open up my report, I now have all of my students listed in here. So the last thing I want to show you, I know we're coming up on the hour, and I'll take any questions that you have, is combining sessions. So if you do want to do some sort of a common assessment where everybody takes the exact same test, you'll then be able to look at how each individual class did and then combine the classes together as a whole to view how the entire department or course did. And to do this, the first thing you have to do is you always want to save your test files. So now that this is all completed and done, I can come up here and do Save As, and now it's going to save it as a scanning session. So now I can always come back to this and look at this at a later date if I need to. Or I can go ahead and just send this to my administrator so they can go and look at how the students did. So when I combine my sessions, this box will appear. I will then go and look for those files that I've been saving. So here are 4 classes that I have, and I'm going to combine them into one. And now I have all the reports, everything's combined together, and it's actually created a 5th scanning session for me. That way it's not going to corrupt any of that data that I just had. Now I just combined everybody together, so now I can see how everybody did with the item analysis for the entire department that took this test. Now one thing to definitely point out is they have to be the same key. If you change the key at all, you won't be able to combine them together. So all classes that you want combined together will have to use the identical key.
Yep.
So Justin, I have a question. Since we'll have a computer attached to the machine, right?
Yes.
And using that same computer. But you want to be sure that your test information doesn't get lost by somebody else deleting it or something. If everybody's using the same machine, how do you keep that from happening?
There's a couple different ways. You would just bring your own flash drive. Instead of saving it onto the computer, you would just save it onto your flash drive. So that way you can go back to your personal computer, plug it in, and then you have all your information right there. If you have a network drive of some sort that everybody has access to at the school, then you can kind of just create your own folder in that network drive and just save it into there. That way, no matter what computer you're at, you can always access it.
Huh?
With student files, we tend not to want to leave them on a computer that everybody has access to. So I would choose probably one of those two ways.
Yeah. That makes sense. Okay. That helps. One other question. When you prepare a key and you do the item analysis, sometimes you realize that you miskeyed something, or there's more than one answer. And then the process for rescoring this is, I guess on the answer key you would mark rescore, and then you'd run would you run all the papers back through the machine again, or does it rescore on the machine?
If you were to make a mistake and you use DataLink Connect, I would say come right into here and make the change here.
Okay. And then electronic.
And then if you want the students to know, you can either go and write at the bottom of their answer sheet and put a different score because you did have to correct it, or you can come in here and use the scorecard and just give them one of these instead of having to go back and make changes to the actual answer sheet.
So you don't necessarily have to run everything through the machine a second time then?
No.
But it's an option though, right?
You could do that if you wanted to.
Yeah.
And it would put the new score at the bottom of the box where it says the rescore at the bottom of the answer sheet.
Okay. Good. Very good.